Thousands of years before the rise of Greece, Rome, or the great empires of Europe, an extraordinary civilization emerged along the banks of a single river. Surrounded by vast deserts and protected from many outside invasions, this civilization would endure for more than 3,000 years, leaving behind monuments so magnificent that they still inspire wonder today. This was ancient Egypt. Its story begins with the Nile River, the longest river in Africa and one of the most important waterways in human history. Flowing over 6,600 kilometers from Central Africa to the Mediterranean Sea, the Nile transformed an otherwise harsh landscape into one of the most fertile regions on Earth. Each year, the river flooded its banks. Although the floods could be destructive, they also deposited rich black silt across the surrounding land. This fertile soil allowed farmers to grow wheat, barley, flax, vegetables, and fruits in remarkable abundance. The ancient Egyptians believed the Nile was a gift from the gods. Without it, their civilization could never have existed. Around 5000 BC, small farming villages began appearing along the Nile Valley. Families learned to cultivate crops, domesticate animals, and store food for difficult seasons. As agriculture became more successful, villages grew into towns and trade expanded throughout the region. Gradually, two separate kingdoms emerged. In the south was Upper Egypt, stretching along the narrow Nile Valley. In the north was Lower Egypt, located in the broad Nile Delta, where the river flowed into the Mediterranean Sea. Although the names may seem confusing, they referred to the direction of the Nile's flow rather than geography. Since the river flows from south to north, the southern kingdom was called Upper Egypt. For centuries, these two kingdoms existed independently. Sometimes they traded peacefully. Sometimes they fought one another. Everything changed around 3100 BC. A powerful ruler known as King Narmer, often identified with the legendary Menes, united Upper and Lower Egypt under a single crown. This event marked the beginning of one of the world's first unified states. Narmer became Egypt's first pharaoh. His famous Narmer palette, discovered thousands of years later, depicts him wearing both the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt, symbolizing national unity. The pharaoh was far more than a king. To the ancient Egyptians, he was considered the earthly representative of the gods. He maintained order, protected the land, led armies, directed construction projects, performed sacred religious ceremonies. Everything within Egypt ultimately belonged to the pharaoh. This concept of divine kingship became one of the defining characteristics of ancient civilization. Following unification, Egypt entered the early dynastic period. Government became increasingly organized. Officials collected taxes. Engineers managed irrigation. Priests supervised temples. Scribes recorded important events using one of humanity's earliest writing systems. This writing system became known as hieroglyphics. Consisting of hundreds of symbols representing sounds, words, and ideas, hieroglyphics decorated temple walls, monuments, papyrus scrolls, and royal tombs. Only specially trained scribes mastered this complex system. Because few people could read or write, scribes held respected positions throughout Egyptian society. The invention of papyrus, made from reeds growing along the Nile, further advanced Egyptian administration and culture. Papyrus became one of the world's earliest forms of paper, allowing records, literature, religious texts, and official documents to be preserved. As centuries passed, Egypt entered the Old Kingdom, often called the Age of the Pyramids. This period, beginning around 2686 BC, witnessed some of history's greatest architectural achievements. The pharaohs believed life continued after death. Death, they believed, was not the end. It was the beginning of another journey. To prepare for eternity, elaborate tombs were constructed. At first, royal tombs were simple rectangular structures called mastabas. Eventually, architects developed more ambitious designs. One of history's greatest innovators was Imhotep, advisor to Pharaoh Djoser. Around 2670 BC, Imhotep designed the Step Pyramid of Saqqara, considered the world's first monumental stone building. Instead of a single mastaba, several were stacked upon one another, creating a towering stepped structure unlike anything previously built. The Step Pyramid changed architecture forever. Future pharaohs sought even grander monuments. The most famous were built on the Giza Plateau. There stand the Great Pyramids of Giza, among the last surviving wonders of the ancient world. The largest belongs to Pharaoh Khufu, known to the Greeks as Cheops. Constructed around 2560 BC, the Great Pyramid originally stood approximately 146 meters tall. It remained the tallest human-made structure on Earth for nearly 3,800 years. Historians estimate that more than 2 million limestone blocks, many weighing several tons, were carefully transported and positioned with astonishing precision. Contrary to popular myths, most modern scholars agree the pyramids were built not by enslaved populations, but largely by skilled workers, craftsmen, and seasonal laborers supported by the Egyptian state. Nearby stand the pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure, completing one of history's greatest architectural complexes. Guarding them is the mysterious Great Sphinx, carved from a single limestone outcrop. With the body of a lion and the head believed to represent Pharaoh Khafre, the Sphinx has watched over the desert for more than 4,000 years. Even today, many questions about its construction remain unanswered. Religion influenced every aspect of Egyptian life. The Egyptians worshipped hundreds of gods and goddesses. Among the most important was Ra, the sun god, believed to sail across the sky each day before journeying through the underworld each night. Osiris ruled the afterlife. Isis represented motherhood and magic. Horus, the falcon-headed god, symbolized kingship and divine protection. Anubis, a jackal-headed guardian of the dead, supervised mummification and guided souls toward judgment. According to Egyptian belief, after death, every person's heart was weighed against the feather of Ma'at, representing truth and justice. If the heart remained pure, the soul entered eternal paradise. If found guilty of wrongdoing, it was consumed by a terrifying creature called Amet, ending the soul's existence forever. These beliefs made preserving the body extremely important, thus developed the remarkable practice of mummification. Specialists carefully removed internal organs, dried the body using natron salt, wrapped it in linen, and placed it inside richly decorated coffins. This complex process often lasted around 70 days. Only through preserving the body, Egyptians believed, could the soul recognize it in the afterlife. Daily life in ancient Egypt was surprisingly organized. Most people were farmers. They cultivated wheat, barley, onions, beans, grapes, and flax. During the Nile floods, when farming temporarily stopped, many worked on royal construction projects. Craftsmen produced jewelry, furniture, pottery, statues, and textiles admired throughout the ancient world. Merchants traded gold from Nubia, cedar wood from Lebanon, incense from Punt, copper from Sinai, and luxury goods from distant lands. Women in ancient Egypt generally enjoyed more legal rights than women in many other ancient civilizations. They could own property, manage businesses, appear in court, inherit wealth. Some even ruled as pharaohs in later periods. Children learned family trades, while wealthy families sometimes hired tutors to educate their sons as future scribes or officials. Cities bustled with markets, workshops, temples, and government buildings. Music accompanied religious festivals. Boats filled the Nile. Fishermen cast their nets. Priests performed rituals inside magnificent temples. Life revolved around the rhythms of the river. The pharaoh remained at the center of this vast system. His authority unified religion, government, military leadership, and national identity. For centuries, the Old Kingdom flourished. Its monuments reflected remarkable stability, wealth, and engineering skill. Yet no civilization remains unchanged forever. Gradually, powerful local governors gained influence. Climate changes may have reduced Nile floods. Food shortages emerged. Political unity weakened. The glorious age of the pyramids slowly came to an end. But Egypt's story was far from over. After surviving years of instability, the civilization would rise again with even greater ambition, producing legendary rulers, expanding into a mighty empire, and entering what historians remember as the New Kingdom, the golden age of ancient Egypt, where warrior pharaohs, magnificent temples, and some of history's most famous rulers would leave an unforgettable legacy. After the collapse of the Old Kingdom around 2181 BC, ancient Egypt entered a troubled era known as the First Intermediate Period. The centralized authority of the pharaoh weakened. Powerful regional governors gained independence, and the kingdom became divided. Years of poor Nile floods likely contributed to food shortages, economic hardship, and political instability. For the first time in centuries, Egypt was no longer united. Different rulers competed for power. Cities fought with one another. The magnificent age of pyramid building had come to an end. Yet Egypt's civilization proved remarkably resilient. Around 2055 BC, a ruler from Thebes named Mentuhotep II defeated his rivals and reunited the country. His victory marked the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, often regarded as one of Egypt's great periods of recovery and cultural achievement. Unlike many earlier pharaohs who focused mainly on monumental tombs, the rulers of the Middle Kingdom strengthened government administration, expanded agriculture, improved irrigation, and encouraged trade with neighboring lands. Egyptian influence stretched south into Nubia, a region rich in gold, ivory, and valuable natural resources. Trade expeditions also reached the mysterious land of Punt, believed to have been located somewhere along the Red Sea coast, possibly in present-day Eritrea or Somalia. Ships returned carrying incense, ebony, exotic animals, gold, and rare plants. The wealth flowing into Egypt enriched temples, cities, and royal projects. Literature also flourished during this period. Stories, wisdom texts, poems, and religious writings became increasingly sophisticated. Many works explored morality, justice, loyalty, and the responsibilities of kingship. Scribes carefully copied these texts onto papyrus, ensuring that knowledge could be preserved for future generations. Despite these achievements, new dangers emerged. Around 1650 BC, a foreign people known as the Hyksos entered northern Egypt. Unlike earlier invaders, the Hyksos possessed advanced military technology unfamiliar to most Egyptians. They introduced the horse-drawn chariot, powerful composite bows, and improved bronze weapons. Using these advantages, they captured much of Lower Egypt and established their own capital at Avaris. For more than a century, the Hyksos ruled northern Egypt, while native Egyptian rulers maintained control of the south. Although foreign domination was deeply resented, the Egyptians learned valuable lessons from their conquerors. They adopted the horse, the chariot, and new military tactics. These innovations would later transform Egypt into one of the strongest military powers of the ancient world. Around 1550 BC, the Theban ruler Ahmose I launched a successful campaign against the Hyksos. After years of fighting, he expelled them from Egypt and reunited the kingdom once again. His victory marked the beginning of the New Kingdom, the greatest age in ancient Egyptian history. Unlike earlier periods, the New Kingdom was not content simply to defend Egypt. Its rulers built an empire. Powerful armies marched into Nubia, Libya, Canaan, and Syria. Egypt became one of the dominant military and political powers of the ancient Near East. Among the remarkable rulers of this era was Hatshepsut, one of history's most successful female pharaohs. Ascending the throne around 1479 BC, Hatshepsut faced significant opposition because Egyptian tradition usually favored male rulers. Instead of allowing this obstacle to limit her authority, she presented herself as a legitimate pharaoh, sometimes even appearing in official statues wearing the traditional false beard of Egyptian kings. Rather than focusing primarily on warfare, Hatshepsut emphasized trade, diplomacy, and construction. One of her most famous achievements was organizing an expedition to the land of Punt. The mission returned with gold, ivory, incense, exotic animals, and living myrrh trees, strengthening Egypt's economy and international reputation. She also commissioned magnificent building projects. Her mortuary temple at Deir al-Bahri, built into dramatic cliffs overlooking the Nile, remains one of the masterpieces of ancient architecture. After Hatshepsut came one of Egypt's greatest military commanders, Thutmose III.
Often called the Napoleon of ancient Egypt, Thutmose III transformed Egypt into a true empire. He led at least 17 military campaigns, defeating rival kingdoms across the Near East. One of his greatest victories occurred at the Battle of Megiddo, where brilliant strategy allowed Egyptian forces to surprise and defeat a coalition of Canaanite rulers. Following these victories, Egypt controlled vast territories extending deep into modern-day Syria. Tribute flowed into Egypt from conquered lands: gold, silver, timber, precious stones, livestock, luxury goods. Foreign princes even sent their children to Egypt to be educated, strengthening diplomatic relationships throughout the region. As military victories expanded Egypt's wealth, its temples grew larger and more magnificent. The vast temple complex at Karnak became one of the greatest religious centers in the ancient world. Generation after generation of pharaohs added towering columns, colossal statues, sacred lakes, obelisks, and decorated halls. Even today, Karnak remains one of the largest religious complexes ever constructed. Yet during this golden age, one pharaoh attempted a revolution unlike anything Egypt had ever experienced. His name was Amenhotep IV. Later, he changed it to Akhenaten. For thousands of years, Egyptians had worshipped hundreds of gods. Akhenaten sought to change everything. He declared that the Aten, represented by the sun's disk, should become the supreme focus of worship. He built a new capital city called Akhenaten, known today as Amarna. Traditional temples lost influence. Powerful priests opposed the reforms. Artists adopted a strikingly different style, portraying the royal family with unusual realism rather than idealized perfection. Despite Akhenaten's determination, his religious revolution proved short-lived. After his death, Egypt quickly returned to traditional beliefs. His successor became one of history's most famous pharaohs, Tutankhamun. Ascending the throne as a child around 1332 BC, Tutankhamun ruled for only about 9 years before dying unexpectedly at approximately 18 years of age. During his reign, traditional religious practices were restored, and the capital returned to its earlier location. Although Tutankhamun achieved relatively little politically or militarily, his name became world famous in 1922 when British archaeologist Howard Carter discovered his nearly untouched tomb in the Valley of the Kings. Filled with more than 5,000 artifacts, including the legendary golden funerary mask, the discovery became one of archaeology's greatest achievements. It offered an extraordinary glimpse into the wealth, craftsmanship, and religious beliefs of ancient Egypt. The new kingdom reached its greatest territorial extent under another legendary ruler, Ramesses II, often known as Ramesses the Great. Ascending the throne in 1279 BC, Ramesses ruled for an astonishing 66 years, one of the longest reigns in Egyptian history. He led military campaigns against the powerful Hittite Empire, culminating in the famous Battle of Kadesh around 1274 BC. Although both sides claimed victory, the conflict eventually resulted in one of history's earliest known written peace treaties. Ramesses also became one of Egypt's greatest builders. He constructed enormous temples throughout the kingdom. Among his masterpieces are the colossal temples of Abu Simbel, carved directly into solid rock. Their gigantic seated statues continue to impress visitors more than 3,000 years later. By the end of Ramesses' reign, Egypt stood as one of the wealthiest and most influential civilizations on Earth. Its armies dominated neighboring regions. Its monuments amazed foreign visitors. Its priests supervised magnificent temples. Its merchants traded across continents. Its artists, engineers, and architects produced works that would survive for millennia. Yet beneath this extraordinary prosperity, new threats were quietly gathering. Powerful foreign kingdoms were rising. Internal struggles weakened royal authority. Economic pressures increased. Within the coming centuries, the empire that had ruled the ancient world would begin a long and irreversible decline, leading eventually to foreign conquest and the end of pharaonic Egypt.
The reign of Ramesses II marked one of the greatest peaks in ancient Egyptian history, but no civilization remains at its height forever. After his death in 1213 BC, the empire gradually began to weaken. Later pharaohs struggled to maintain the vast territories their predecessors had conquered, while internal political divisions and external invasions placed increasing pressure on the kingdom. One of the earliest challenges came from the mysterious Sea Peoples, a confederation of maritime raiders who attacked civilizations across the eastern Mediterranean during the Late Bronze Age. Around 1177 BC, these invaders threatened Egypt itself. Pharaoh Ramesses III successfully defeated them after fierce battles on both land and sea, preserving Egyptian independence. However, victory came at a high cost. The empire's military resources were exhausted, economic problems worsened, government authority weakened. Over the following centuries, Egypt entered another period of political fragmentation. Regional governors became increasingly independent.
Powerful priests, especially those serving the god Amun at Thebes, accumulated enormous wealth and influence. The central government could no longer exercise the same level of control it once had. As Egypt weakened internally, foreign powers recognized an opportunity. The Assyrian Empire, one of the most formidable military states of the ancient world, invaded Egypt during the 7th century BC. Assyrian armies captured important cities and briefly controlled much of the country. Although native Egyptian rulers later regained independence for a short time, the kingdom never fully recovered its former strength. Soon, another great empire appeared. The Persian Empire, led by Cambyses II, invaded Egypt in 525 BC. After defeating Pharaoh Psamtik III at the Battle of Pelusium, Egypt became a province of the vast Achaemenid Persian Empire. For the first time in its long history, the land of the pharaohs came under lasting foreign imperial rule. Although Egyptian traditions continued, political independence had largely disappeared. Persian control lasted for decades, interrupted only for brief periods of native Egyptian resistance. Then, in 332 BC, another extraordinary conqueror arrived. His name was Alexander the Great. After defeating the Persian Empire, Alexander entered Egypt without significant resistance. The Egyptians welcomed him as a liberator from Persian rule. He respected local religious traditions and visited the famous oracle of Amun at the Siwa oasis, where priests declared him the son of the god Amun. Alexander also founded a new city on Egypt's Mediterranean coast. It became known as Alexandria. Within only a few generations, Alexandria grew into one of the greatest cities of the ancient world. Its magnificent harbor connected Europe, Africa, and Asia. Its famous Library of Alexandria sought to collect every known book and manuscript. Scholars from across the Mediterranean gathered there to study mathematics, astronomy, medicine, geography, philosophy, and literature. Nearby stood the legendary lighthouse of Alexandria, or Pharaohs, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, his empire was divided among his generals. Egypt came under the control of Ptolemy I, who founded the Ptolemaic dynasty. Although the Ptolemies were of Macedonian Greek origin, they adopted many Egyptian customs and presented themselves as traditional pharaohs. Greek and Egyptian cultures blended during this remarkable period. Alexandria became the intellectual center of the Mediterranean world. Scientists made groundbreaking discoveries. Mathematicians advanced geometry. Astronomers studied the stars. Medical doctors expanded medical knowledge. Trade flourished between Africa, Asia, and Europe. The final ruler of the Ptolemaic dynasty became one of history's most famous women, Cleopatra VII. Ascending the throne in 51 BC, Cleopatra was intelligent, multilingual, and politically gifted. Unlike many earlier Ptolemaic rulers, she learned the Egyptian language and actively embraced Egyptian traditions. She sought to preserve Egypt's independence during a time when the expanding Roman Republic dominated the Mediterranean. Cleopatra formed political and personal alliances with 2 of Rome's most powerful leaders. First came Julius Caesar, with whom she had a son known as Caesarion. After Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra allied with Mark Antony, one of Rome's leading generals. Together, they attempted to challenge the growing power of Octavian, the future Emperor Augustus. The decisive moment arrived in 31 BC, during the Battle of Actium, a massive naval conflict fought off the coast of Greece. Octavian's fleet defeated Antony and Cleopatra. Facing inevitable defeat,
Antony took his own life. Soon afterward, Cleopatra also died, traditionally believed to have done so by allowing an asp to bite her, although historians continue debating the exact circumstances. With Cleopatra's death in 30 BC, more than 3,000 years of pharaonic civilization came to an end. Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. The age of the pharaohs was over. Yet ancient Egypt itself was never forgotten. Its monuments continued standing long after its rulers disappeared. The Great Pyramids of Giza remain the oldest surviving wonder of the ancient world. The Great Sphinx still guards the desert. The temples of Karnak, Luxor, Abu Simbel, Edfu, and Philae continue to amaze millions of visitors each year. For centuries, however, one great mystery remained. No one could read the ancient hieroglyphics. That changed in 1799 when French soldiers serving under Napoleon Bonaparte discovered the Rosetta Stone. Inscribed in Greek, Demotic, and hieroglyphic writing, the stone provided the key to understanding Egypt's ancient language. In 1822, French scholar Jean-François Champollion successfully deciphered hieroglyphics, opening thousands of years of Egyptian history to the modern world. Since then, archaeologists have uncovered extraordinary discoveries: royal tombs, hidden temples, golden treasures, ancient cities, mummies preserved for over 3,000 years. Each discovery has deepened our understanding of one of humanity's greatest civilizations. Ancient Egypt's influence extends far beyond archaeology. Its achievements in architecture, engineering, mathematics, medicine, astronomy, agriculture, writing, and government shaped later civilizations. The Greeks admired Egyptian knowledge. The Romans borrowed Egyptian culture and religion. Modern architects continue studying the precision of the pyramids. Scientists remain fascinated by Egyptian engineering and medicine. Ancient Egypt teaches us that great civilizations are built through innovation, organization, and vision. It also reminds us that even the mightiest kingdoms are not immune to change. Empires rise, empires fall, but their legacy can endure for thousands of years. From the fertile waters of the Nile to the towering pyramids of Giza, from the powerful pharaohs to the brilliant scholars of Alexandria, ancient Egypt left an imprint on human history unlike any other. Its monuments still dominate the horizon. Its mysteries continue to inspire exploration. Its achievements remain symbols of human creativity and determination. More than 5,000 years after its first kings united the Nile Valley, ancient Egypt continues to captivate the imagination of the world. Its story is not simply the history of a nation. It is the story of one of the greatest civilizations ever created. A civilization whose legacy continues to stand, carved in stone beneath the eternal Egyptian sun.